In honor of the first movie I ever reviewed on this channel, which I believe was Godzilla 2014, which I was rather generous to, even though it was kind of a piece of shit. It wasn't horribly made at all. It just had too little of the monsters in it. I am currently reviewing Godzilla King of the Monsters, which I think came out last year. And holy shit. I'm 13 minutes in. I'm going to be checking in periodically as I watch this film, but let's just say that if I had to judge this film just on these first 13 minutes, this is probably the worst movie I've ever seen in my life. Holy shit. I almost had a seizure just from the fucking snap, snap, snap editing as it keeps going from scene to scene to scene to scene, and it keeps like jerking me around. Already I can tell the monster effects look pretty good, but that's the only good thing I have to say about this movie. The acting is some of the worst acting I've ever fucking seen in my life. Holy shit. The dialogue for these characters, especially with this first like scene where they're like in some sort of United Nations hearing, the dialogue is abysmal, and clearly whoever wrote this script, the target audience of this film is children under the age of 10. And calling the humor attempts in this movie childish, as well as just the exposition dialogue, which is literally all that anybody's ever said is just dialogue, exposition so far, horrendous. The acting is abysmal. There's this one scene where I think it's like the caterpillar that's supposed to be Mothra is like being born, and it like slams into this catwalk that this metal catwalk that this woman's walking on. And if this was at all realistic, when the caterpillar slams into the catwalk, the woman would have got rocket launched 100 feet in the air, just straight up like a fucking wiffle ball. And her response to acting like this giant CGI monster has crashed onto the surface she's walking on is to just reach out her hand and just lightly touch the railing like, oh, I almost stepped on a Lego. And to think that the first two actors that I recognize that have come up in the first like 5 minutes, they're just rocket launching characters in. Ken Watanabe and Charles Dance, Tywin Lannister himself, are in this. I'm so sorry that your careers have been besmirched by this anal leakage. I'll check back in a little bit, guys, but so far, oh my god, I literally was seizing out like this, like beyond cringe. I'm like fucking in physical pain at the dialogue in this movie. The writing is just, Jesus Christ. But I'm just hoping if I shut my brain off and I pretend to be an 8-year-old kid again, I might be able to get into this fucking goddamn Care Bears level bullshit. Alright, I'll be right back. Alright, I checked in at 14 minutes. Here we are, 28 minutes into the movie. They've introduced, obviously, Ghidra, as well as apparently there's some sort of Avengers fucking ship in the fucking water, basically, that's falling around Godzilla at extremely close range, and they immediately freak out just when Godzilla moves towards them and shit. And I'm going, wait, how do they know Godzilla's going to attack? Well, we've isolated his bioacoustics. Immediately, this bioacoustics fucking plot device here is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, but it could work, especially in a water medium. If you think about a creature as big as Godzilla, his heart would be the size of a fucking building. You'd be able to hear his heart rate and be able to tell it's agitated. But then they say the reason why it's agitated is because even though they've following him around in the water at close range, Godzilla's just noticed they're there, so they point their guns at him. And he gets mad because he knows in the middle of this dark ocean that they're pointing their guns at him. And then he chills out when they deactivate their weapons. And I'm just going, how smart and or stupid do you want this thing to be? So I'm thinking about Ken Watanabe fucking saying or Watanabe, I never know how to say his name, I'm sorry. Fucking talking to the UN and going, we're all going to be Godzilla's pet. And I'm like going, shame for display. I'm trying so hard to shut my brain off because I like a couple of the actors in this movie. I know that if I was an 8-year-old child, a lot of this dumb shit would be getting past me. But one thing I do got to say is, look, if you're an 8-year-old kid and the villain of your movie is not just taking over science facilities, but butchering every human being there whom he apparently doesn't need to run any of the equipment he's taking over. He just needs one or two people who can isolate and lock down the bioacoustics of Ghidra while Ghidra's frozen in fucking ice. meaning that he's probably making next to no fucking noise. He's like in a coma, but you're going to isolate not just like, I guess, his heart rate or whatever, but also the way he speaks when he's asleep in a giant block of ice. And again, there isn't one character in this movie who treats these creatures like a normal human being would. If you saw something roughly the size of a small mountain, like 50, 60, 70 stories tall, that could kill you in a heartbeat, that apparently has no soul, even though they're claiming that some of these fucking monsters actually like people with zero fucking evidence to support that fucking conclusion. A lot of them are acting in awe of them or thinking they're cool, like a zoo animal. Nobody is appropriately scared shitless of these things, and the only character I can even believe would be actively trying to engage them at close range is Tywin Lannister, Charles Dance's character, probably because he's some sort of psychotic eco-terrorist and therefore doesn't address reality like a normal person. Everyone else is completely unbelievable. The dialogue is cartoonish as hell. And the sad thing is, the script is so bad that the harder the actors try to take this material seriously, the more corny and dumb as fuck as it gets. But so far, I'm not like dying of embarrassment yet, and I haven't had the violent cringes I had in the first 10 minutes, like when they were talking about, oh, we're going to show you the fucking the giant titans mating each other, even though they're all clearly of some kind of different species of each other, except for the mufons or whatever. um and it's like, oh, we blurred out their genitals in this movie. I'm like, okay, why are you trying to show anybody this who's like a politician or a military leader? This is of the interest of animal studying people, and the only guy who makes any sense is the one guy who says repeatedly, kill them all. Look, if this is a beast that's 70 stories tall that you probably don't have the military technology to kill outside of like high explosive ballistic rockets that you'd fire from like a ship off a shore or something at one of these motherfuckers, you should be shooting first and asking questions later with virtually all of these creatures. The dialogue saying like, oh, some of them are benevolent, or that the a lot, even military personnel talking about restoring the natural order, and this scientist lady who's of no particular authority of importance wouldn't want us to kill the monsters. This is some kiddie liberal bullshit. It's really embarrassing. But again, I'm gonna try to let it go. Cross my fingers. About half an hour in, at some point, surely a monster fight's gonna happen, and maybe I'll be okay. Okay, partway through the raid on Antarctica, after, basically wherever the fuck Godzilla was, they get to Antarctica to catch up with fucking the team, the Charles Dance team that's trying to wake up Ghidra. They get there in like 5 fucking minutes or something, or an hour even, none of which makes any sense unless they are right fucking next door to goddamn Antarctica. They show up there, none of the bodies that Charles Dance has created all over the place are visible anywhere. Apparently, they took care of that while also covering a 70-story fucking wall with individual thermobaric bombs. And again, if this movie for kids, remarkable amount of gun violence and people dying. But so the dad character, who's the only character with any fucking brains in this entire movie, somehow gets in the middle of this gunfight that American fucking like Marines or SEALs are losing, although they appear to be middle-aged men and women instead of, like, I don't know, able-bodied young Marines in their prime raiding the facility. They get their ass kicked, and the dad, alone with a pistol, smart dad, corners the main villain and scares him, and so somebody drops the actual bomb trigger, and he actually is in a position to rescue his wife and daughter, and they refuse to go with him because even though they're with murderous eco-terrorists who are trying to free a giant fucking cosmic fucking great old one, they don't go with their dad who's about to rescue them because what? Because he's an alcoholic? And then the mom herself picks up the detonator and frees Ghidra herself. That's right where I paused it. I was gonna say that the only way you could think of any of these characters as acting in any way rational is if you just kind of pretend that they are all mentally the age of the child who's the target audience for this movie, like 10 to 12. But seeing a character refuse rescue from a psychotic terrorist and then help the psychotic terrorist complete their mission and refuse to be rescued. The, the fucking Twitch is back. The Twitch is back. This movie is so fucking dumb. And one last thing before I go. This whole color filter thing has to stop. I know that like movie posters and trailers are famous for doing the teal and orange thing or the blue and orange thing. And there's a lot of matrix vision where if you're doing anything technical, you want a green filter. This is the darkest, most filtered movie I may have ever seen in my life. Has not been, I think, a single scene, except for maybe one in the first 2 minutes, that has had anything even approaching natural lighting. Every scene in this movie has been very dimly lit, very dark, and there's been this heavy color filtering. I feel like I'm watching this movie through a fucking bowl of jello. I swear to God, blue jello, orange jello, green jello, blue, orange, green, blue, orange, green. It's so goddamn distracting. I'm so trying so hard to fucking just let it go. Just watch the movie and let it go. But there's too much stupid. There's too much manipulative stupid in this movie. Okay, quick check-in. We saw the first fight between Godzilla and Ghidorah, and it looked cool at parts. But the hardest part about it to enjoy is the laws of physics do not exist in the universe that this movie is set in. Apparently, this terrain we're on is either ice on top of water, or it's ice like on a cliff overlooking something. When Ghidorah comes up, he comes up straight through the ground, which is ice. And then Godzilla does the same, but it implies that since Godzilla came from the ocean, that they must be on ice, an ice sheet over water. But then he goes from just popping his head up to teleporting on top of this ice, standing straight up, like as fucking gigantic tall as he is. Now, Ghidorah, like in scale, I was paying attention to the scale of the building that was over Ghidorah's body, which sunk into the ice, by the way. We're going to get to why that's a problem. And it looked like Ghidorah was not as big as Godzilla. And then when Ghidorah finally climbs out of the ice, and then Godzilla teleports out of the ice in 10 seconds flat without any noise or anything, Ghidorah is significantly larger than Godzilla, which is bizarre. And then they start attacking each other, and it looks cool for a second. But the problem is, there are characters in a small helicopter that Ghidorah's like banging one of his heads on, which is just like making some windows crack. I'm like, if Ghidorah was doing anything other than lightly booping his snoot on this helicopter, he would have crushed it like an aluminum foil ball. Just like crinkle, crinkle, it's gone. Everybody inside's dead. And then their fight on top of this thing, and like the ice is breaking, and it's not clear what's under the ice. Why is the ice breaking this way if there's no water underneath it? At one point, Godzilla disappears off screen like he fell off a cliff, but there was no splash. So I'm like, what fucking surface are they on? What the fuck's going on? At one point, people start shooting missiles at fucking Ghidorah. One of those missiles, by the way, that they're firing at this giant monster lands right in front of dad character, sane, rational dad character, which, by the way, would have shredded him to goddamn paste. And instead he goes flying and hits a wall, and instead of, again, being crushed into goddamn paste, he's just like knocked out. Watching the end of this fight, which apparently Godzilla loses, and then he wakes up in a hospital. I've seen better effects in this. I've also seen way worse than effects in this, so I'm not going to really bitch about the monster effects. This is by far like the best looking scene in the movie so far. However, it's so hard to enjoy when the terrain doesn't make sense, the physics don't make sense, and including the scene with the people fighting and Ghidorah freeing himself from the facility beforehand. The camera just cuts and characters just move several hundred yards instantly, or go up several floors of a building instantly, or the monsters go from under the ice to standing on top of the ice instantly. In the way cameras keep cutting, it's impossible to tell where characters are, how much time passes, what direction they're facing, where they're moving. There's no sense of direction. This editing is pure, unadulterated fucking chaos, and it's very difficult to pay attention to. I feel like I'm an ADD person inside of a kaleidoscope thing. Oh, one of those kaleidoscope things at a fucking fun house, where it's like fucking gives you vertigo and shit. I have vertigo from watching this fucking movie. When I first started watching this movie, I thought I would be able to check in every 15 to 20 minutes, maybe bang out a review that was about a half an hour long and just get it out and on with my life. I'm 50 minutes in to a 2 hour and 10-minute movie. I have to stop for now. This is going to have to be part one of maybe part two of a series. Unfortunately, every time I've ever reviewed anything, movie or video game, and I had to break it up into multiple videos, the first video gets a lot of views. The second one gets a fraction of that. Something tells me that when I actually bother to sit down and watch the rest of this movie, maybe tomorrow, the day after, I'm going to have even more funny, hilarious ways to bitch about this complete piece of shit. But for now, we're going to have to end with what I was hoping was going to be just a minor little thing, a little thread through this movie. The whole liberal, goddamn climate change, fucking human beings are bad thing is apparently going to be a central focus of this movie. One thing I noticed a couple scenes ago, the whole Ghidra getting released scene, is that it sincerely appeared that the mom scientist character who made the bioacoustics machine appeared to be sincerely trying to kill American soldiers and to kill her ex-husband, the father of her daughter. That appears to have probably been true. She refused to be rescued. She chose on purpose to stay with the eco-terrorist. Purposefully freed Ghidra, which very nearly killed herself and everybody present at the Antarctica facility. And when the dad wakes up from his coma and is immediately back in the command center, who immediately gets a call from her, who's somehow immediately teleported from goddamn Antarctica to northern Mexico, she calls them and says she is saving the world by freeing all the monsters because humans are bad. Humans are the dominant species, and look what happens. Overpopulation, blah, 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 climate change, and I stopped the video. I'm sick of this Thanos tier save the world by killing everyone bullshit. This is the worst trope ever. Okay? Human beings operate off of self-interest and interest in other human beings. Part of the reason why we're kind of a problem for the world is we justify raping its resources, blah, 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 because we care about us, as we should. And there are ways to limit what we do, and we already do limit a lot of what we do. We've eliminated at least in the West, I can't speak for India and China, fuckers, eliminated a lot of our waste and pollution and all that shit, and have started conservation efforts, and shit has been getting reversed. And a lot of the climate change blah 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 that's not getting reversed is because of specific countries, not because of the human fucking race. Okay? And the way we solve these liberal fucking focused problems that liberals care about in a most irrational way is not to release monsters that can kill entire cities, that have killed thousands. This woman, who you would think her personal motivation, given that her son was killed by Godzilla, she should have a similar idea to her husband, which is either to control outright these creatures or to kill them. And her idea of a solution is to wake up all these monsters in order to kill millions, if not billions, of people. I can't keep watching this for right now. It's too late at night. I undertook this at a bad time to try to do this long essay format where I'm going to bitch probably close to the length of this movie about this movie, but this movie is a piece of shit. Some of the worst acting I've ever seen. The female lead, the mom scientist character, is a fucking psychotic retard who makes Tywin Lannister, who's by the way has had like 3 spoken lines in 50 minutes and has only been on camera for about 2.5 minutes of this film. She's basically serving his function. She's acting like the eco-terrorist who wants to kill people because, like the famous nostalgia critic joke from all time, the most evil thing in all of the cosmos, man. Oh, man is so terrible. Fuck off. Fuck off. I got 1 good monster fight, 2 decent monster scenes in an hour of this movie, and the rest of it is some of the worst editing, special effects that are okay, but in a physics sense, in the blocking of these scenes with these monsters, fucking terrible. And the whole thing is through these thick goddamn filters. It's like I take like this sheet right here and just like, how well can you fucking see me through this shit? It's so goddamn blue. You can't. It's fucking garbage. I honestly, looking back, having seen it twice now, Godzilla 2014 is a piece of shit. But major reason why it's a piece of shit is because the monsters are barely in it. I was told that this movie's better because there's more monsters. First of all, so far, no, there's not. They just look cooler. They're the more recognizable monsters, these ugly ass looking MUFON fucking things that look like the aliens from Independence Day. You know, Ghidra's and Mothra's so far pretty much better than that. And I'm sure that this movie's backloaded with decent action. But so far what I've been being shown is some expensive-ass CGI that doesn't look very good because these people just don't know how physics work. They don't know how to shoot these creatures in a way that's believable. The close-ups of Ghidra looked kind of bad, to be honest with you. And the fucking character acting. First of all, why is crazy ass let them fight Ken Watanabe? Why is he in charge of anything? Why is he able to boss around the American military? He's a fucking scientist. Why is anybody listening to the irrational alcoholic dad who's overacting his way through this movie? And God bless whoever's the actor for the male lead of this movie. He's trying, and I feel so sorry for him. He really should not be trying. And he's not trying very well, but he's clearly not trying to ham his way through this fucking movie. The female lead is a horrible actor. The daughter is a fucking horrible actor. And all the military personnel are fucking abysmal. I don't know who anybody's name is. I don't care. All I'm supposed to try to do is not give a fuck about the waste of time filler that the human characters are and just watch the monsters. But the monsters aren't on screen long enough. They don't look good. Godzilla loses a first fight that he's in for like 2 minutes. Most of that scene, the vast majority of the scene is Ghidra versus a couple of human soldiers who think that the best thing to do to shoot a monster who's the size of a goddamn Saturn V rocket is to shoot it with a machine gun. If that thing was made out of paper, you wouldn't kill it. Because of how big it is and because of the firepower you're working with. These people had 2 options, run or kill themselves. And technically, fighting that thing might as well kill themselves. They didn't even beat a fighting retreat. Why'd they all land on ice? Didn't they have an aircraft carrier thing? What the fuck happened to the aircraft carrier thing? Then they had this giant, unbelievably gigantic stealth fighter, Star Destroyer looking thing that dropped them off. Apparently, it flew so far away that Ghidra was able to fuck with them for over 10 minutes before it was able to fly back and shoot the most piddly-ass fucking rockets I've ever seen at this thing. Keep in mind, the sheer godforsaken size of this plane, this sci-fi fucking plane, is the size of an aircraft carrier. It should have been hauling such fucking artillery that it could have turned Ghidra into fucking red mist. No matter how fucking big it is. Like if Ghidra was made out of steel, they could have blown him to fucking smithereens. I'm trying so goddamn hard to pretend to be a little kid and enjoy this. And I think even as a little kid, I would have thought this was cool once and never watched it again. This movie sucks.